As the next feature in our API, we have field limiting. So basically, in order to allow clients to choose which fields they want to get back in the response. So for a client, it's always ideal to receive as little data as possible in order to reduce the bandwidth that is consumed with each request. And that's of course especially true when we have really data-heavy datasets, right? And so it's a very nice feature to allow the API user to only request some of the fields. So, as the third feature, we will have field limiting. And just like before, let me start by showing you how it's going to work here in Postman. So we're going to specify a field called fields, and then the name of the fields that we actually want to receive. So let's say we only want the name, the duration, the difficulty, and the price. All right. And so the implementation will actually be very similar to what we did before with sorting. So if rec.query.fields, then let's actually again create a variable for these fields here. Because just like before, Mongoose actually requests a string with the field name separated by spaces. All right. Let me actually start by writing out that part. Okay. So the query itself. So query is equal to query.select. Okay. And here, for example, it expects a string like name, then space, duration, and price, for example. Okay. And so this way, it will only select these three field names and send back the result only containing that. Okay. And actually, this operation of selecting only certain field names is called projecting. Okay. So let's now go ahead and create basically the string just like we did up there. Okay. So we start with rec.query.fields, then we split it by a comma and join it with an empty string. Or with a space, actually. Sorry. So with the space, and so that's then going to produce this exact string with this exact format. Then here, all we have to do is to use these fields. Then, just like before, I also want to add a default, so in case the user does not specify the fields field. Okay, so in that case, we will just actually remove something. Okay, and let me show that to you first. So down here, we always have this __v, which is set to 0. And Mongoose just creates these fields because it uses them internally. And we could disable them, but that's not a good practice. Again, because Mongoose actually uses them. All right. But what we can do is to basically never send them to the client. So we can exclude them. And the way we do that is to, instead of doing __v like before, so like we did up here, basically, we just prefix it with a minus. Okay. And minus is then not including, but excluding. So what we had before here again, with the name and duration and price, that was to include these fields in the response. But this way, with the minus, we have everything except the v field here. Okay, so we're excluding only this field. All right. So let's go ahead and test that. Send it, and let's wait for it. And yeah, indeed. So the ID is by default always included. Okay, so we cannot remove that. But besides that, we have just the name, duration, difficulty, and price. Okay, and we could, of course, also use that minus, so that exclusion here as well. So we could have everything minus the name and minus the duration, for example. So let's test that as well. And so, if you now check it, you will not see the name and not see the duration anywhere here. Great. And now just as a final test, let's see if our default works as well. Sending the response. And so now we no longer have that v variable here set to 0 in all the documents. All right, great. Now there's one last thing that I want to show you, which is that we can also exclude fields right from the schema. All right, and that can be very useful, for example, when we have sensitive data that should only be used internally. For example, stuff like passwords should never be exposed to the client, and so therefore we can exclude some fields right in the schema. So for example, we might not want the user to see when exactly each tour was created. For example, the tour might already be kind of old or something, and so let's say we want to always hide this created at field. All right, so we can go into our schema, which is in the tour model, of course, and then at created at, we simply set the select property here to false. And so now when we try to get our results, you see that it's actually no longer there. Okay, and so like this, we can basically permanently hide this from the output. Perfect. So one more feature that is actually working now, and so let's now move on right to the next one.